right, Cringe Music Podcast Series 2, talking about Radiohead's entire discography. This is episode number 3. Very excited for this episode because we're getting into the good shit now. We're doing OK Computer this episode. So yeah, last episode, we did The Bends, which is their follow-up album to Pablo Honey. Radiohead had an interesting start, kind of doing, more grunge, alternative rock back in the early 90s there, and then kind of more of the same on The Bends, but that album was really depressing, and I hope Tom York got a hug afterwards. But this album, we're finally getting into the sound that I think that Radiohead is known for. Because with Pablo Honey, like, me having listened, I mentioned this on the other 2 episodes, I've listened to their later albums before going to their earlier stuff, and they just sounded like a completely different band on Pablo Honey, and they hadn't quite gotten that, I guess, kind of sound that they do nowadays, doing like kind of experimental rock stuff. But yeah, I'm very excited to see what you guys think of this album. Can't wait to get right into it. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and start. So I have the vinyl edition of this. So I think it was 2017. They released this version, "Okay Not Okay," for the 20th anniversary. That includes some bonus tracks here. But we're not going to talk about those. We're just doing the standard track listing here. 12 tracks. Yeah, get right into it. Track number 1, Airbag.
Okay, so I have so many thoughts about this. Like we're really coming in hot. Um first the first point is that, like, the last album, there was a whole lot of themes of, like, he felt uncomfortable, out of place. He felt bigger than I thought Radiohead ever got. Like, there was this sense of, like, Radiohead was bigger that made him, feel discomfort. Like he just wasn't growing into that fame kind of thing, right? And I was really interested to see how he transitioned from the last album into this one. Uh and all of a sudden this is like super hopeful, right? This is super, like, uplifting and positive, and I'm excited to be alive, which is a violent left turn from the last 2 episodes. But what really, like, sat with me kind of insanely was the sound on this song, because I don't think that the sound was like, it didn't sound like a completely different band, right? But it did sound like they just eliminated the grunge and went more towards like a pop rock kind of style. But there was a weird blend of things were crystal clear and things were really blended. So there were parts of the song that Tom enunciated super well, words were super clear, and then there were parts, much like the last couple of albums, where he just kind of like mumbled noises and they were supposed to vaguely resemble words. But, like, there were technological, like, synth sounds. There were, like, the guitar sounded super crisp and clear. The drums sounded super, like, muffled, kind of intentionally, like almost purposefully distorted. The balance between the two, I feel like, has significance, but I can't put my finger on it. It was a weird blend of things that I think really worked well.
It's nice to know that after a couple years, Tom still has a vendetta against pronunciation. Not in a bad way, but my God, my man, he does not want to pronunciate. I swear to God. I This definitely had a more. I mean, obviously, it had a much more uplifting sentiment to it, but just the way that the composition felt more uplifting as well. It definitely felt less grungy. It felt like they were leaning more into they're kind of not straying. They're kind of moving less from grunge into more of like an alternative rock kind of sense. But I mean, I love the one thing I do love about another thing I love about Radiohead's like sound right now, just that we've heard, is that they do a lot of this very like flowy kind of almost like vibey kind of music, I guess. Um, yeah, so far this is a really good intro to this album.
Uh, so his enunciation isn't going to get any better on later
Yeah.
albums, so expect that to
Yeah.
continue on.
Yep.
But yeah, background on this song, it's literally just about like a car crash that he survived, and that's basically it. In the description here on Genius, he kind of compares surviving a car crash to being reborn in a way, which is,
Hmm.
I guess, why it sounds so uplifting. Um,
Oh,
apparently, on a B side to the last album, The Bends, he kind of touches on this again. But we didn't listen to that. But you can go back and check that out if you want to. I think the track is called Killer Cars. So B side for The Bends if you want to go check that out. Um, but yeah, I like this track a lot. It's a good way to open up the album. The bass line on this is really groovy, and the drums go well with it. There's some really interesting kind of they almost sound like record scratches, but I don't think that's what it is. Kind of on the tail end. There interesting sounds going on there at the end that I like. Yeah, it's a solid track. I really like this one.
I'm interested to see how this like you said it kind of sets the tone for the album. And as somebody that's less experienced with Radiohead, like I'm super interested to see if we continue that same like positive, uplifting kind of vibe, or if this is just like I lived bitch and we're back to sad, you know? Like
So just kind of skimming the Wikipedia page here. Some of the themes this touches on is just consumerism, more social alienation, like we've seen before. I think mostly the consumerism is like a bigger theme on this album, just rampant consumerism, that kind of thing, and just speaking out against that in a way. But yeah, we'll see what you guys what you guys think about the later tracks on this. So track number 2, Paranoid Android.
okay. This I definitely got the anti-capitalism that you were talking about the last time. This song sat with me so strangely. I don't want to make that sound like I disliked it, but there's so many things that just confused me. They messed with time signatures a bunch. This song had like at least 4 or 5 like very distinct sounds from itself, where it could have been 5 different like pieced together portions of a track rather than just one unified track. There was layering that was super strange. So like during the chorus, there was like a Microsoft Sam voice that sat underneath all of the other things. It was just at such a low volume. It was high enough to notice, but not high enough to actually like hear or understand what was happening without the lyrics being in front of me. Like wouldn't have been able to piecemeal it as words. Um, there's next to no enunciation, but there's definitely a lot of passion in the song, even when you can't understand the words being said. There was just so much going on with this track. I didn't dislike it, but it definitely, from the first track, feels out of place. And compared to what we've heard from Radiohead previously, like presents itself in a very different way than similar themes that we've heard before.
So I definitely also got that anti-consumerism. Uh, yeah, I'd also echo that. What Tom lacks in pronunciation, he definitely makes up for in passion with a lot of
Mm.
his songs. He may not be the most what is it, like, articulate when it comes to his pronunciation, but the passion and like emotion behind his voice is noticeable, I guess, to say the least. I really loved just the overall instrumentation into this song. This had a lot of very like complex layering, just kind of like not necessarily difficult to decipher, but a lot of moving parts to it. I really, really love when bands and guitarists are able to take their instrument. I guess just any instrumentalist, but specifically the guitar in this one, that um, he's able to take the guitar and make it sound almost counter to what you'd think a guitar could sound like. They're playing with his lead guitar. I particularly really enjoyed in this song.
Yeah, there's a lot of like really cool instrumentation stuff on this. that I really like a lot. My only complaint, like Ted said, is that I wish the Android voice at the beginning maybe would have been a little louder. Maybe it was intentional that they had it quiet. I don't know, but it is kind of hard to understand what it's saying without the lyrics in front of you. That's really my only complaint about this.
I also think it's fascinating just to look at the Genius annotations. Like there are references here that are suggested to be from other pieces of consumption, right? Like I think we saw it a lot in the last album that there was a disconnect between I'm putting out media for people to enjoy and consume while being anti-consumerism, right? But here, even to reference other pieces like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland were the ones that I saw as I'm flipping through Genius here, that like if those like allegorical pieces are accurate from these annotations, like it's just very strange to like, hey, I've consumed things, you should consume my thing about telling you not to consume things. It sits in a very strange place, like the representation of his beliefs.
Yeah. I was just gonna go through the background here that it has. Apparently, there are 3 distinct moods in what Tom refers to as the 3 different states of mind, with the lyrics tying into themes that are going to be present in the rest of the album. These include insanity, violence, slogans, and political objection to capitalism. Some of the lyrics in this were based on an unpleasant experience he had at a bar in LA, during which he was surrounded by people high on cocaine. In particular, he was frightened by a woman who became violent after a drink was spilled on her, and this woman inspired the line, "Kicking, squealing, Gucci little piggy." And York described her as being inhuman and said, "There was a look in this woman's eyes that I'd never seen before anywhere and couldn't sleep that night because of it."
Interesting. Thanks, cocaine.
But yeah, it's definitely a really, really interesting song. For sure.
I was gonna say this one also probably has some of the most, just the sheer amount of lyrics than the other ones.
Oh yeah, it's also the longest track on the album. So.
Oh yeah, I didn't even realize that. You're right.
Yeah. But yeah, if you guys got nothing else, we can hop into track number 3, Subterranean Homesick Alien.
So musically, I really loved the layering. This was super transient. There were so many layers to it. Everything blended really well. Volumes worked. You caught all of the things that you were supposed to catch. Like everything really fit in really smoothly and beautifully. Lyrically, the only thing I could think is Tom DeLonge, "I Believe in Aliens," right? Like that. There's a whole lot of like, I guess if you really break it down and you really think about the lyrics, like it's kind of the same vibes of like, I wish I could be outside of society and see the world as a whole kind of thing. Like it's still the same kind of, I don't want to be here experiencing things this way. But I guess you have to really break down the lyrics rather than it being so direct anymore, like we've seen in previous songs.
Yeah, I found I really liked the more ambient kind of like floatier kind of music that they were doing. I noticed. So I feel like with this one, I mean, I'm reading from the Genius. It's very much about Tom feeling like an alien, wanting to be abducted and taken away to somewhere with people who understand him. And I feel like the music kind of reflects that in a way of like a floating in space with aliens kind of way. I thought this was kind of fun for being kind of out there, I guess. I enjoyed this one a lot. I'm still enjoying this quite a bit.
Yeah. A bit more of a low-key song compared to the other two here. The instrumental, I think, does kind of reflect some of the themes a bit. It's a little spacey. It's a little ethereal in a way. There's some cool sounds going on. Yeah, it's a solid track. I like it. Alrighty. So track number 4 is exit music for a film.
Okay, I knew I had heard things off of OK Computer before, and it took until like this song started before I realized why I had definitely heard things from it. Now that I'm putting together like what Radiohead is and where I've heard this before, I'm so fucking agitated. So if I'm not mistaken, this was in the Leo DiCaprio version of
Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. So, the song was originally wrote with the intention to be included in the film. They went with a different song, but they still used it as the for the closing credits appropriately.
Okay, so it just gives me so much fucking like discomfort, right? Because first off, again, Radiohead super anti-capitalist. Let's make a song for a movie and get radio play, be even more famous. That the entire second album is like, I don't want to be this famous. Okay, so I'm already really agitated, but also like this just felt like a Muse song, like where it's that super like reverberated bass.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of complexity through most of it, but it's enough to keep you engaged. Even Tom's voice kind of matched over. Like this.
Oh, now that you mention it, yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah, it sounds like a Muse song. All right, but also like, all right. So at the very end, right? I hope I'm not spoiling Romeo and Juliet for anyone. They poison themselves thinking the other one is dead, right? So the outro to this song being, "We hope that you choke," and just repeating that, right? Just feels really bizarre because they're not hoping that the other one chokes. They're just trying really hard to join the other person. Like if this was written for a consumerist thing that is very anti-Radiohead, it feels very weird that they're also like bucking the trend and just like, nah, death, fuck it. This one sits so strange with me. I really feel uncomfortable with this track.
Also, really quick, want to mention, if I'm correct, I think it's also used in the season 1 finale for Black Mirror.
Oh, that's possible.
It's the episode where like the prime minister has to like fuck a pig or something. It's that episode. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Got it.
Yeah, this was a pretty interesting one. It definitely, I don't want to say necessarily out of place, but it's definitely different from the other 3 tracks so far. Which, I mean, given the production or why they wrote it, it's understandable. This also feels like the first time that I didn't need the lyrics. I was like, oh, I kind of understand what he's saying this time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah, most of the time. He also just decided to fuck it. Who needs a chorus or a bridge or any of that shit? Just verses, only that, which I definitely think helps play into that kind of uncomfortable or just kind of the like maybe unease, because it's not following a very like conventional, I guess you could say, like formula for these kinds of songs. It definitely deviates from that. Also, I was gonna say this is the last one too. Radiohead, and this is for all their albums too, they really like to let their music like kind of breathe. They kind of like let it. They like to give it time for almost to like sink in, kind of. There's a lot of points where Tom will just pull back either his like. We'll just kind of pull back for a second and then let the music sit for like 15 to 30 seconds. And it's just, I don't know. I very much, I know this is maybe a little agitating for Ted, but I found this one was actually probably one of the ones that I found a lot of more enjoyment in.
Yeah, I really like the way that this song ends, like the kind of guitar tone as it's coming in, and then throughout the whole end of the ending there. I really love that a lot. And yeah, now that you mention it, the Muse comparison, he really does kind of sound like Matt Bellamy sometimes. And like even like some of the guitars, that's bothering me now. Fuck you for pointing that out, honestly. Not that I hate Muse, I'm just, there's like 2 songs by them that I like, and all of their albums are pretty mid, honestly. They don't stand out to me in any way, but yeah, this does kind of sound like a Muse song a little bit. Now that you've mentioned it.
Don't get me wrong, like I'm not here to talk shit. I just like, I don't know, like it very much fits that vibe of very simple, but like that reverberating bass, it like enough to hook you, and then sad that could be used in a movie soundtrack. Like that's Muse's whole fucking thing, and this was that to a T.
I don't know, man. Anyway, track number 5, Letdown.
So, again, same with several of the other songs in this album, like super transient, like a lot of really cool sounds, really great layering. Like audibly, this is really, really great. Lyrically, I guess there's a lot of words to go nowhere. We've definitely dumped that grunge sounding music to still have grungy lyrics. Like the music is super like uplifting and positive, and the words are just kind of like, hey, I have hope, it gets diminished, I hate everything. Like still super grungy. I am gonna say though that like I think the last half of this song was one syllable. Like I just one grunt into the next grunt, that it was all one.
Yeah, this one was a lot, I'd say. This one had just a lot to it. There was a lot of pieces kind of working together that still came together in not necessarily a chaotic way, but in just kind of busy, I guess I could say. There's a lot going on in this track, and I definitely feel the ambient. I think I was looking at their, what's it called, Wikipedia, and I see that they have one of their guitarists is like Ed O'Brien. He seems to be their like ambient kind of electronics person, and I see that he was given a lot of room to breathe in a lot of these albums, to sort of bring his own kind of bring his ambient sound more to our forefront. Now, obviously, we definitely heard a lot of ambience from them before, but this album seems a lot so far to be having a lot of that. Yeah, this was probably the first song that I had a really difficult time just with the lyrics in general. That I'm just like, I'm not exactly sure if I'm getting where this is going, Tom. Interesting, very interesting song.
Yeah, I know I'm dumb, but like I can't really pinpoint exactly like what the themes on this track are supposed to be. Like even looking at the lyrics and skimming through the annotations, like I have no idea what they were going for here. But instrumentally, this is really cool. Lots of really cool layering. I like the little beep boop noises everywhere on it. Yeah, it sounds cool. No idea what they're going on about though. And just kind of going into the background here at the bottom, they recorded this at like 3 a.m. at some historic mansion in England. Lots of multi-layered arpeggiated guitars and piano, unconventional time signatures, sort of wall of sound kind of production going on. Tom said in an interview that sentimentality is being emotional for the sake of it, and we're bombarded with sentiment, people emoting. That's the letdown, feeling every emotion is fake, or rather every emotion is on the same plane, whether it's a car advert or a pop song.
That's really interesting, following the first track where there was this celebration of rebirth after his car accident, and then it only takes 4 tracks before it's, yeah, emotions are fake, nothing actually is real, I didn't really feel reborn. Like that, man, that's such a weird place to lead off this album if that's the description of this song.
Yeah. Oh. Well, let's see. We're about halfway through now. Track number 6, Karma Police.
I think this one was the most like audibly pleasing. Like this felt like the most complete track we've heard so far. But it also like very much surprises me that Tom wrote these lyrics. Um, Again, layering was good. There was a lot of really unique sounds. Everything sounded like it flowed really well together. Um, but the theme I got from like reading the lyrics and going through everything was kind of that Tom feels more human than we've heard in 2 albums. There's always been a sense that I've gotten from his lyrics of holier than thou. Like I experience things more deeply than you. Even when he's admitting his humanity, it's in a way that's better than most humans, right? Um, but this one is just kind of like, hey, I've done what I can. The universe is still going to get me at the end of the day. Feels really strange. And then after taking in all of that, the outro where it's like, for a minute I lost myself, right? Is that like coming back to humanity, or is that like instant detraction away from what the rest of this song was, and now we're going to get a holier than thou complex again in the next song? This it's the words sat very strange with me, but I think this is my favorite one so far, to be honest. The verses, the cadence sounded really familiar. I was really comfortable with this song. It just, the words just sit in a weird place for me.
Yeah, I felt this song continued on with the kind of with a level of the kind of flowy ambient sounds. It wasn't nearly as prevalent as it has been, but they definitely kind of keep this almost kind of contrast between the very flowy ambient music that's feels kind of dreamlike, like you're floating on a cloud in a dream, while the lyrics are usually kind of a little bit more darker or a little bit more um like meaningful than just something as simple as floating on a cloud. So it's it's just interesting, like comparing contrasting their lyrics versus their like song composition, I guess. But I definitely enjoyed this one a lot too. I'm not sure if I'd say it's my favorite on the album so far, but I can't say that I've disliked a song yet.
Yeah, not too much to say about this one, honestly. I really like the way that this one ends. There's just something about it, I don't know,
Mm.
kind of
Oh yeah,
hard to explain.
yeah.
But going
I
into
love the like experimental shit that they do.
yeah, yeah. But going into the background for this, the title comes from an inside joke. Members of Radiohead would threaten to call the karma police if someone did something bad. Tom explained that the song was about stress and having people looking at you in a certain malicious way. He said it's for someone who has to work for a large company. The song is against bosses, fuck middle management.
Hmm?
They emphasized in interviews
Where
that
the fuck?
they emphasized in interviews that the song was humorous and not entirely serious.
Uh,
There's also themes of insanity and dissatisfaction with capitalism. Um,
of
the
course, there it is.
melody for this is supposedly from the Beatles song "Sexy Sadie," so it's like
Hmm.
almost the exact same melody. I haven't heard that song. It's off of the White Album. It's been a minute. I'd have to go back and compare, but
Yeah.
That doesn't sound familiar, yeah.
okay.
I want to know where on earth is this anti-capitalist? Like usually it's super overt. I don't like hear anything that's like fuck middle management. What the fuck?
Unless there's some like cryptic metaphor in here that I'm not getting. Yeah, I have no idea.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he mentions payroll, but like that's very I mean, if you can take the one instance of mentioning of a payroll as being anti-consumer, then I guess so.
Well, and
That's stretching
and
it.
Yeah, exactly.
and in context, it's also like I'm not enough, but we're still not like dependent on the universe kind of thing is where I went with that. Like that doesn't seem. Oh man, that bothers me a lot, and now I'm confused as
I was
hell.
gonna say, it's interesting when Tom and Radiohead has had a lot of they do a lot of very lyrical, very kind of like abstract. Well, maybe not necessarily abstract, but very like very good symbolism, I guess you could say. And this one, it seems like they definitely maybe this was more of a comedic to them than it is to everyone else kind of thing.
I mean, maybe.
I don't know, man. All
Very
right.
interesting.
So the next track is interesting. I'm not gonna say anything about it other than that it's interesting. Track number 7, Fitter Happier.
Fitter, happier, more productive, comfortable, not drink.
Okay.
Okay, to lead off, what the fuck? I okay. From an artistic perspective, right? Not necessarily like listenability, but like the art form, right? I very much appreciated the juxtaposition of this song. It's very clearly like using a very simple robotic spoken text message to give you those ideals of anti-society, anti-capitalism, like very very cut and dry. Like I appreciate the art form that this is. I, I guess it only sits strange with me because of the rest of this album. Um, like as an art form, like this is everything that Radiohead has done to this point that is anti-capitalism has led to this moment. This feels like the culmination of a lot of work and expressing exactly how they feel in a very concise, deliberate way. That's also artistic and it's brilliant. But the rest of the album just doesn't lead into this point that makes me feel like this might have been better placed on a different album somewhere, or at least at a different point in this album.
And the track that follows this is kind of weird too. Not like this. It's just weird that the track comes after this, considering how this sounds. We'll get there. You'll see what I mean, maybe.
I also want to like just highlight that there's a lot of references to living things here, right? Like there's talks about emotion, there's talks about like very human interactions, right? And the idea that it's like robotic Microsoft Sam saying all of these things, like I think really drives it home how like meaningless those experiences are in terms of the society that we're all in. Like as an art form, this is brilliant.
Yeah, as less about music, I mean, obviously, and more about art. This is a very like comparable piece to the rest of the album. It seems. It does seem it makes the last track still kind of fit in almost a little bit less if you like buy into Tom's idea of it being comedic. Because this is very, very kind of heavy, with a lot of like kind of serious, kind of like maybe points of like betterment, sort of. It's very interesting. I can't lie that I couldn't help but laugh when I see the line "still kisses with saliva, frozen winter shit." I know it's probably not meant to be. I'm sure there's something they're going at for that, but just seeing that with everything else, just kind of it's very interesting. They put they put in a lot of lines that like tires that grip in the wet is before it there is less chance of illness, but right after it, a lot of shot of baby strapped in back seat. It almost seems a little out of place. I mean, it seems like it's talking about being in a car, but it just seems kind of weirdly out of place. But overall, it feels this feels like and I noticed too that this is basically sort of in the middle of the album. This feels like something a band would do to fit in to then like transition to a different like second half of the album. Like the second half would sound like have a different distinct kind of sound to it. But yeah, this is very interesting and very interesting art. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is supposed to be like bullet points diagnosing society for what it was in the late 90s, I guess. I think in the last track there was an annotation about like Tom not liking like the modern radio music landscape at the time or something, and this was like this album was supposed to be an answer to that in a way. But yeah, this is a weird one for sure. The instrumentals on this very unsettling, and I'm sure that's intentional. I don't know that they've done anything else like this in future albums. Like this is like a one-off kind of standout thing. It's interesting. I think it's neat. The text-to-speech that they're using here is called Fred, and it's used in an application that was included with 90s Macs.
Yes, I was gonna say that sounds familiar, and I couldn't remember where it was specifically.
It sounds like the voice that says "push me" and then just touch me, right? Like it's the
Mm,
same.
Yep.
It's the same
yeah,
voice to me, but it's much less musical and more deliberate.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I still really can't get over like even if this is the response to like the radio landscape of the time. Like this just feels like the culmination of so much work. It almost disappoints me, Mike, that like nothing has repeated this. Like this feels like what the message that they're trying to get across for 3 albums now. I'm almost disappointed if this is the last time we hear this.
Yeah, there's no more weird, creepy instrumental text to speech songs. This unfortunately.
Interesting.
But yeah, track number 8, Electioneering.
This one felt like notably not like Radiohead. Uh there were so many noises happening. None of them were layered, none of them were balanced. There seems to be like no consideration into to volume or noise or overlapping. It's like when you go see your like to a really shitty local concert venue and hear a local band and everyone just says turn my volume up, you don't need to hear those other guys, and then all of them do that, and there was really no discernible sound. The lyrics were like pretty notably like anti-political, which checks out, but they also weren't super complex. The rest of this album has had like a lot of lyrics, a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions from Tom, and now there was like 6 unique lines.
I was
I,
gonna say that, yeah.
I there's like no substance to this except for just noisy loudness. Everything overlaps. Very bizarre.
This feels like I mean, I guess this does feel like a step away from the songs earlier in the album. This definitely throws away that dreamy ambient kind of sound for a much more like not necessarily punk, but much more of a in your face kind of sound. Like this is gonna be loud and fuck anything having to do with being soft or subtle. I mean, the this is a very overtly anti-political song. Um, which also I guess reminded me that Radiohead is an English band. So they have lyrics referring to UK politics, which I have no fucking clue what was going on in England in the 90s. I have a semi idea of the politics in the United States in the 90s, but fuck if I know anything about England. Um, I almost felt like they went for that kind of harshness on the music, almost like on purpose as like a we want to get this message. Like it's not really like a this. You're right. This is not a very subtle message. This isn't them being like trying to say this in more flowery words. This is them just straight up saying no. Very interesting.
Yeah, this one just kind of seems like pretty straightforward. They didn't feel like they needed to do anything like fancy or anything. It's just kind of loud, vaguely punk-ish song that's anti-politics in a way, which I guess is fine. It's just, yeah, it feels weird considering like the other tracks before it. And yeah, I don't know jack shit what was going on politics wise in the UK in the 90s, let alone here, really. I have a vague idea, but I'm not an expert in politics at all.
Yeah, vague.
And even then, like from this song, because there are only 6 unique lines, it's hard to even discern like a viewpoint other than anti-government.
Yeah. Or just general like antitrust sort of, yeah.
Alrighty. This next one is probably one of my favorites on the whole album. It's track number 9, Climbing Up the Walls.
All right. Okay. So this song is a great follow-up to the last song because I got a lot of the same like noisy vibes to this one. That there's a lot going on. It's not necessarily like intentionally artistically balanced, but I think for this song it works really well because of the nature of the song. And I also think that there was more consideration into the noisiness of it rather than just being noisy. I also found this song really fascinating because I think it's been pretty evident that there's something wrong with I don't want to, speak Tom's business, right? But like with the narrator of these songs rather than just attributing them all to Tom, right? But uh this song seems to finally get a grip on mental health, that maybe there's something inside his head that gives him these perspectives rather than just society's fucked. um I think there's still a little like outside perspectives, like the fact that it seems to personify a little bit like some external entity that's creating this discomfort, but it definitely seems to acknowledge that it's inside the narrator's head. um I very much appreciate the way that the discomfort starts to be like analyzed as potentially internal rather than external. This one fascinates me. I like this a lot.
Yeah, the lyricism for this is very, very interesting and worth the dive in to look at. It's more than just 6 lines of very, very overt, symbolism. He uses personification, yeah, to really try and give I guess, the narrator's mental health sort of a more physical picture. And I feel like the first verse is like very like kind of powerful. I mean, the whole song's powerful, but um like, I've dealt with anxiety like my whole fucking life. So like, reading some of the lyrics, it's like I definitely relate to a lot of it. um and just like feeling that almost desperation of just wanting to be done with it and being like, I will climb up the fucking walls if it means I can stop being anxious. Yeah, I definitely I like this. I like this one a lot. For the lyricism more so than the other ones, I'd say. But maybe it's just because I relate more to this one. But also, I really liked that the beginning and ending of the song, like it kind of led into and led out of like a very kind of almost anxiety-inducing kind of sounds. Like it left a very it had very uneasiness to it. The middle of the song had, it transitioned into a much more, I should say maybe less uneasy song, kind of in the middle with the instrumentation. But like once everything kind of gets stripped away slowly, the guitar comes out, as all those pieces start to kind of slow down, and it kind of reveals the uneasiness again. You could probably sit here and analyze this one song for the next couple hours.
Yeah, I love this song. Like I said, it's probably like my favorite on the whole album. I love the strings on this and kind of the guitar that comes in during the chorus here. Apparently, their guitarist Johnny Greenwood did all of the violins on this himself. And there's 16 different violins playing quarter tones apart from each other. So that's interesting.
Fascinating.
That would definitely make something sound anxious or uneasy.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is supposed to be from the perspective of kind of like paranoia itself and giving those feelings their own voice, which definitely makes sense if you look through the lyrics here. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this one. I love this song.
Yeah.
Track number 10, No Surprises.
This track had a super like dreamy trance like sound to it that I appreciated a lot. I think it flowed really nicely. It was mixed really well. But I really don't have anything else to say about it. Like nothing really stood out to me. There was no like clear message. I didn't get any like super significant feelings even to read through the genius annotations. Like this one didn't grip me the way that other of their songs have.
So reading the genius lyrics, um it seems to point towards like a more like heaviness in terms of feeling complacent in society and feeling like suicide or leaving, getting out of here is like the best option. And it's this this is another song where the dreamy sort of flowy ambient instruments contrast a more depressing, uh I guess, more thought-provoking ideals versus the music that's, at least in this one again, kind of more simple. I'd also been wondering, where had I heard that fucking intro? I've heard that intro so many fucking times on TikTok, and it's always attached to the most depressing shit on the platform. Just that like beginning guitar melody is everywhere. This one was also sort of interesting, and I definitely, I feel like you could analyze the lyrics a lot in this one.
I don't really have a lot to say about this. It's just kind of nothing about it really stood out. I guess, yeah, the lyrics could be about just giving up on life, not really like wanting to. I don't know. Yeah, just giving up on life, and there's like some kind of metaphor about carbon monoxide poisoning in here, I think.
Oh yeah, it mentions carbon monoxide. I think they're trying to say that like carbon monoxide is like a silent killer, kind
Yeah.
of. How you can just it can be in your house and you not even notice.
Yeah.
I mean, it did go from like a handshake of carbon monoxide to the chorus of no alarms, no surprises. But I feel like that even gets detracted by the second time you hear the chorus where it doesn't have the same lead in. So like even that symbolism doesn't line up for me.
I don't know. Nothing about the track really stands out to me. It's fine, I guess. Let's see, almost done here. Track number 11, Lucky.
I don't. This is another one that I don't know what to do with. The sound is very different than anything else on this album. There's almost like a not quite Western vibe to it, but there's more of a twang to the guitars that isn't as like transient and dreamlike as the most of the other songs on this album. Um, there's there's more hope to this one than I think there have been in other songs, but it also seems to be like partially a cry for help, which is a weird juxtaposition to be able to say both of those things. Um, I don't know. This one just it's hard for me to create any opinion or feeling about this one when there's so many things going on.
I feel very much the same. I have just a hard time kind of getting much out, like lyrics wise. And obviously he has a meaning behind these. It's a little lost on me. um, this song, or this album, I'd say probably is really growing my appreciation for their guitarist Johnny Greenwood. He is doing some really not as not well, this might have been more unique back in '97, but I love his solos right now. They're very I don't know how to virtuosic. They remind me a lot. I think one of my favorite guitarists is John Frusciante, and I think he pulls a lot of. It feels like he pulls a lot of similarities or influence from Johnny, or maybe vice versa. But I definitely enjoyed the instrument more than I enjoyed the lyrics of this one.
Yeah, I don't really know. I also don't have a lot to say about this one. Every time I listen to this album, it's just the last three songs don't really do anything for me. They don't really stand out in any way, and yeah, like coming back to this again, like the song's fine, but like it doesn't really stand out. There's nothing really interesting about it to me at all. Alrighty. Final track number 12, The Tourist.
I got to agree with you, Mike. This doesn't do a whole lot for me. I recognize that there's like pieces of this that are, you know, really personal. That there's things that like Tom or the narrator, right, is feeling that like, you know, having to experience life super fast, right? But like I don't think they do a good job at making it like powerful or meaningful. I don't think that there's any like hook necessarily that gets you to buy into the song as a listening piece. Like this one just kind of is.
I felt a lot during the last, I'd say 3 tracks, maybe 4, that obviously Radiohead and Tom love doing the more artsy level stuff, but these last 3 definitely the lyrics seem to almost become not necessarily more simplistic, but require like additional like interpretation or like investigation to like, I guess it feels like Tom was going for much more of the artsy kind of lyrical ending for his album. Um, I still really enjoy the like instrumentals. I really enjoy the dreamy kind of end to the album. It kind of felt like it had like it started kind of slow and then it went up and kind of came back down a little bit. Um, it's interesting. Yeah, I guess I could say the last 3 I wouldn't say are my favorite song in this album, but interesting.
Yeah, again, my last 3 songs just they don't stand out to me in any way. I feel like this last one kind of like goes on longer than maybe it needs to. Like the entire album I think is really solid and there are some cool moments on it up until right after climbing up the walls, and then the last 3 tracks are just like nothing basically. Like they don't stand out in any way. I don't think there's anything interesting about them like lyrically or instrumental wise. Like they're just kind of eh. Supposedly, just looking through the Genius annotations here, some people have interpreted the chime at the very end there to mean possibly 4 different things. I'm not going to get into that, but apparently there might be some symbolism behind the little triangle chiming there at the end. I don't know. But yeah, final thoughts on the album. Yeah, like I said, this is considered to be one of Radiohead's best albums and one of the best rock albums to ever come out of the 90s. As far as Radiohead's discography goes, this and the album that they followed this up with, Kid A, are considered their best albums, their masterpieces. I do think that there are, like I said, like up until right after climbing up the walls, like this album's really solid. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's really good, and then it's just those last 3 tracks that kind of take it down for me. I do think that this is an improvement from the last album, The Bends. So in the ranking, it would be reverse release order here: OK Computer, The Bends, and then Pablo Honey last. But I'm kind of wondering where I'm going to put this in my final placements later on.
So far for me, I have to disagree with you, Mike. I think the Bends felt like a more complete album, right? Like they had the whole album's picture in mind. I think the top ends of OK Computer were significantly better than anything we've heard from these guys so far. But I guess it just felt disjointed enough and not in like an organized, thought out way. I thought that there were pieces of this that were just too simple, that just didn't elicit any emotion or thoughts whatsoever, that it makes it hard for me to consider this the great album that it was revered to be. And I think the last 3 songs are just like an embodiment of that idea further, that just they didn't bring anything out at all. Honestly, for me, I think this one's much closer to Pablo Honey than it is to the Bends. As a whole album listening experience, I think OK Computer has to be third for me thus far, to be honest.
Okay.
I'd it's really tough. I definitely think that I'd agree that I think OK Computer has some of the highest like highs that we've had so far. Actually, I'd say it's kind of hard. I think that OK Computer has a lot more of like kind of a like, I don't know how to put it, like more artsy, kind of a higher kind of like concept kind of thing. Not necessarily as a concept album, but just kind of a higher like ideas, I guess. The Bends felt much more like not necessarily radio music, but it sounded much more accessible, a little bit more approachable, I'd say. But I'd say that actually right now, OK Computer might be my favorite. It's a little difficult. Honestly, between that and the Bends, it's kind of a toss up for me right now. Um, I still think I would put Pablo Honey last, but again, there's not been anything that I would say that I outright dislike. Like putting Pablo Honey last isn't out of like, oh, I didn't like that one. It's just out of everything, it's the one that I thought I didn't like the most.
Yeah, again, like I don't hate Pablo Honey. I'm just kind of looking at this as like the band progressing and evolving their sound further. And with the first album, they were just kind of emulating what was going on at the time. And then with the second album, they weren't quite doing the exact same thing. It was just kind of another step further, you know? And then OK Computer is just, they kind of went like all out for a good chunk of it. So I just kind of see it as like more progression, you know?
I will give you that. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
OK Computer sounds most like their own sound rather than a reflection of other things that I've heard. But I also don't know that that sound like gives the vision that they've given the like the perspective of for so many albums now, right? Like, I mean, I think that they're like, what was the one that was like super political, right? That like, but it was only 6 lines. Like there was no complexity. It was just like, yeah, politics are bad, and that's the song, and it lasted about that long, right? Like again, the high ends were super high end. The Microsoft Sam or Mac Fred, right? Like is the depiction of what they want to do, and as an art piece that's great, but as a listening experience, like it's just really hard for me to say that like, yeah, this was the most listenable album. Like it was easy enough to get through it.
Gotcha. All
Yeah.
right. Well, uh, next week, we're doing Kid A, which kind of see, without giving away too much, it kind of has them going in a different direction. So if you look at, you know, like I do, some of these like flow charts of how to get into X band thing, normally with those, it has Kid A in one column and then OK Computer in another column. And it's like, pick one of these. And then depending on which one you like, go with whatever these albums. So this isn't quite, I'll say it's not quite, I'll just go ahead and say it. They do more electronic stuff on this one. So if you're a fan of more electronic sounding stuff, you might prefer this one a little bit more. I think I picked this one during the original series. I don't remember what everybody's thoughts on this one, but in the battle, Kid A versus OK Computer, I definitely like this one a little more. So it's been a hot minute since I've listened to it though. So we'll now that I've have the context of the first 2 albums on top of this, we'll see if my opinions change at all, which I don't expect they will, but you never know. I'm curious to see what you guys think, mostly. Yeah, I've got nothing else. No concerts, no records I picked up. Nothing else to talk about, so I guess we can wrap up here.
Yeah.
So catch y'all next time. See you.
Yep. Next week for Kid A. Peace.